What's up, everybody, and welcome to another premium bonus episode.
Yeah. Hello.
Hello. So we're gonna actually what we're gonna do today is we're gonna talk a little bit more about the Jinn because we had so much information. We decided to cut some of it out of the episode that we'd put on our main feed, on our free feed. So some other rather interesting Jinn topics,
Yeah,
I guess you could say, information.
we had a few other tidbits that we wanted to share with you, so we figured we put it on our bonus content.
Yeah. That episode ended up being what, 2 hours, and it was over 2 hours.
Yeah, it was about 2 hours.
Ended up being pretty long, which we don't typically have time constraints or anything like that. We don't set any limitations on ourselves as far as, oh, we're only going to go this amount of time or whatever. Maybe with a guest, if a guest has a time limitation, but
it's our show. We do what we want.
Yeah, we do what we want. But in the spirit of transparency and honesty, we were just really tired when we were recording that episode. So we were kind of like, as we're going, we're kind of like, all right, cut this one out. All right, we'll cut this out. Let's skip to this part. And that was not trying to take away from the content of the show or anything. It was just strictly to kind of try to keep it moving so that we could actually get through the show. But yeah, afterwards we were like, hey, we cut out some really stuff that definitely should have. It was interesting information. So we figured, you know what, we'll just do it as a bonus, and we'll put it on the premium feed for everybody that's listening and watching right now. So why don't we get right into it then?
So one of the first things that got left out were Jinn hauntings. The Jinns sometimes take possession of a building or locale just as they take possession of an individual person. In the West, hauntings are a phenomenon attributed to ghosts or spirits of the dead. In the Muslim world, a haunting is a practice of the Jinn. In Saudi Arabia, where Jinn are taken very seriously, people are careful to avoid houses and other buildings said to be haunted by them. Sometimes these buildings are left completely abandoned. During the construction of the kingdom's subterranean facilities for petroleum product storage in the Riyadh area in the late 1990s, workers asked for extra pay on the grounds that the underground chambers were haunted by the Jinn, and their request was denied. There are many stories documented where places believed to be haunted by Jinn are avoided at all costs.
Can you imagine that? Like you're like, say, I don't know, some United States project manager contracted to go out there and organize all this and get the workers, and these people are coming to you. We need extra pay. You're looking at them, why? And of course, you're probably going through an interpreter. Let's be honest. So you go through this interpreter, and the interpreter is relaying to you back what these locals are saying. Well, if you expect us to work there, we need extra pay because the Jinn.
It's haunted by Jinn.
And you're just like, what?
I feel like, okay, I need to check it out for myself. If it's really haunted, I'll pay extra.
Right. But imagine that you're just like, you never heard of anything like this before. And then now you're asking, as this American, you're asking this interpreter, what's a Jinn? And then he has to tell you and explain to you, and you're just, what?
But
is this for real?
What's interesting is I've brought up our friend Karen Rontowski. She has the podcast Paranormal Karen, and she talks about Jinn a bit on her show. She's done episodes on it, and she was the one who pointed out that so many people just like to say, like, oh, everything's haunted by ghosts. It's always ghosts. People don't look at different things like Jinn, like fairies. There are so many different things that can be out there that we can't see and we don't have an awareness of. So everything in the US just gets placed, the blame gets placed on ghosts.
Yeah. And I think that's also, obviously, that's our media, right? That's what hauntings are popularized essentially by all the stuff we see on TV or before that, radio shows or books. It was usually in this country, it was always about the ghosts. And that when you say paranormal, that's immediately what somebody thinks is ghost or poltergeist. That's usually what it falls into.
Yes. And I did come across quite a few stories where it brought up places believed to be haunted in the Middle East people stay away from. People will go out of their way to avoid an area they believe are haunted by jinn. So they're very cautious.
I mean, it's kind of like one of those deals where with the just the very nature of the jinn, they're beings that can't be seen, right? That's if you believe everything. So if you can't see it, how can you prove its existence? So I'm sure a lot of these folks are just raised with the stories and probably have the attitude of, well, I'm not going to take the chance, because I'm sure that everybody has every country culture, everything has a folklore type story, and anybody, that's the genius of the jinn and the story behind it, anything can be attributed to them, and somebody, perhaps any kind of what could be perceived as bad luck or misfortune, well, they crossed a jinn, or they angered a jinn, or something like that.
And if you listen to our jinn episode, maybe they accidentally pissed on an invisible jinn. You never
Right.
know.
Yeah, exactly. If you believe they're there and they're real and they do exist on this plane, then yeah, that could have been what happened too. That's why this stuff's so genius, because prove it isn't real. Prove it is real. Well, prove it isn't. You know what I mean? It's kind of, anyway.
Yeah.
So how about jinn and illness?
According to Islamic traditions, jinn are capable of causing physical illness in humans as well as possessing and haunting them.
What?
Yeah. To deal with jinn caused illnesses, Quranic, I don't know if I'm saying that right, Qur''ANIC.
Quranic?
Quranic medicine is invoked.
I don't know if that's correct or not, but
well, that kind of medicine is invoked, including the I can't say the word.
Recitation
is
of
that
appropriate.
How you say it? I know it's like recitation of appropriate suras, suras,
suras,
and the application of herbal and other physical remedies recommended by the Prophet or others in Islamic traditions. According to Dr. Abu Mundhir Khalil ibn Ibrahim Amin, thank you, who wrote the book The Jinn and Human Sickness, the types of, quote, sickness and harm, unquote, attributed to the jinn include intense fear as well as psychological and nervous diseases such as insanity, depression, tension, anxiety, epilepsy, personality disorders, and something called waswas, which Dr. Amin describes as whisperings from the devil or temptation, but is also known as paranoia. Jinn may also bring on physical illness that modern medicine cannot treat and for which there seems to be no medical cause. They may be responsible for hallucinations and for social strife, such as hatred between couples, business partners, friends, and relatives. Female diseases such as menstrual irregularities, heavy bleeding, infections, and infertility are blamed on the fire spirits. Male sexual problems are also their fault, including impotence and premature ejaculation.
Impotence and premature ejaculation.
These poor jinn, it's like they're getting blamed for everything.
That's the genius of it. Anything that can go wrong, anything that's quote unquote bad or whatever, anything that is not favorable to us humans, it's all the jinn.
So a woman comes home with an STD and tells her husband, it's a jinn. I'm possessed by the jinn are making me sick. They're causing this.
It's the jinn, damn it.
It is. Turkish Islamic scholar Fethullah Gulen, known for his efforts to promote dialogue between Islam and the West, writes in an article on the jinn in the modern world. He says, quote, jinn can penetrate a body even deeper than X-rays. They can reach into a being's veins and the central points of the brain. They seem to be like lasers, which are used in everything from computers to nuclear weaponry, from medicine to communication and police investigations, and to removing obstructions in our veins and arteries. So when we consider that Satan and all jinn are created from smokeless fire that penetrates deep into the body, like radiation or radioactive energy, we can understand the meaning of the prophetic tradition, Satan moves where the blood moves. It might be a good idea for medical authorities to consider whether jinn cause certain types of cancer, since cancer is an unordered and diseased growth in the body that we describe as kind of a cellular anarchy. Maybe some jinn have settled into that part of the body and are destroying its cellular structure.
Again, the genius of the jinn.
But
They're
what if that
just
could be it?
that's yeah, that's something.
The jinn are causing
That
cancer.
is something.
It's very interesting because I think that when it comes to a lot of illness, like we make ourselves sick.
Oh, everything. I'm telling you right now, everything is self-imposed. We unknowingly, most of the time, do it to ourselves, unwittingly and unknowingly, because we don't know any better, because we're not taught any better. We're taught to eat junk. The minute you're out of the womb, you're getting shot up with Lord knows what. Read a vaccine insert, and see what's really in there. And I mean, we do it to ourselves. Obviously, a baby's not doing it to, but you know what I mean. Humans, we do it to ourselves. So to say that it's a jinn that causes cancer or whatever, come on, come on.
It's a fascinating thought, though.
It's definitely, yeah, if you want to do a thought exercise or something like that with it, that's fine. But come on, to blame that this is where they kind of lost me with the whole
But
jinn
I
thing.
will say, when you
I
have,
mean, they lost me before that, but I mean, this is where I really go.
I will say,
Okay,
when you have spirit attachment or possession, that can cause physical illness. It can cause
I'm
personality issues. So if it's replace spirit with jinn, it is possible. But I think a lot of stuff gets blamed on jinn when it's not really them. I'm not saying it's impossible or it doesn't happen at all. I'm just thinking there are probably more people who might want to
okay.
blame them, and
So
that's not what it
let
is.
me just let me just get a clarification,
Okay.
because are they saying here that all cancer is caused by jinn? Is that what they're
I
implying? That
don't
any
know.
type? Because if that is the case, that's where I'm like, come on,
I don't think they're
no.
implying that all of it. I'm just saying that it can be, it
But
can
where they're
happen.
saying, it was just here that, uh, good grief, it might be a good idea for medical authorities to consider whether jinn cause certain types of cancer, since cancer is an unordered and diseased growth in the body that we describe as a kind of cellular anarchy. Now, I can see, like where you said, a spirit attachment or something of that nature. If you believe in that, I can see where an anomaly like that, some kind of entity or whatever, attaches to a person. Yes, I can see where it's obviously it's going to suck the energy out of wherever it's attached, and for sure it's going to cause cellular damage, which could result in cancer or something along those lines. Fine, but to say that certain types of cancer,
Are
medical
only
authorities
caused by
need
jinn.
to need to look at jinn as a potential cause. I mean, come on, come on. That's where I got the, is this an absolute? That to me, that's a little much. I'm not saying it's impossible that that could happen. It would make sense for that to happen on like a very small scale, though. Not every type of cancer.
Um,
Hey, okay, we got a checklist we got to go through. We got to check what's your diet like, what's the medical history, what's your family history, and we have to check and see if there's a jinn
well, I was
attachment.
just going to say, imagine going to the
I mean,
doctor and being diagnosed
you
with
know,
cancer and
come
then
on.
having the doctor be like, we want to make sure it's not a jinn possessing you, causing this issue.
That's what I mean. That's where it gets, that's a little much, and that's where you lose me.
Yeah, I wouldn't say all of it, but I think it could contribute to some people. All right, jinn abductions.
Oh,
Alex, do you want to read this one?
I I would love to. I would love to. Bear with me. I'm not wearing my glasses. Okay. Jinn have been accused of abducting humans, men, women, and children for centuries, from Northwest Africa to the Far East. These alleged abductions date back to the Middle Ages and possibly earlier. People could be abducted for a variety of reasons. For example, for marriage or sex, for trial in jinn courts, or for replacing a jinn child killed by human action, deliberate or inadvertent. There are incidentally uncanny similarities between these kidnappings by jinn and modern accounts of abductions by alien visitors from space. If nothing else, these similarities suggest striking parallels in the ways human beings of all times and places react to unexplainable or frightening occurrences.
So could that be like a missing 411? Maybe it's Jen kidnapping people?
Could very well be. In 7th century Arabia, one of the prophet's companions, he was unidentified but was said to allegedly be a member of the Ansar or one of Muhammad's early supporters from Medina. He was outside performing the evening prayer when a jinn kidnapped him. He was absent for so long that his wife remarried. Eventually, he reappeared in Medina. One of the prophet's closest companions, Umar ibn al-Khattab, who later went on to become the second caliph or political successor to Muhammad, asked the man about his absence. The man replied, quote, "The jinn kidnapped me and I stayed among them a long time," end quote. He was held prisoner by unbelieving jinn, he said. Eventually, a band of believing or Muslim jinn raided the camp of the unbelievers, battled them, and defeated them. Quote, "They took captives and took me prisoner along with them. They said, 'We see you are a Muslim and it's not permissible for us to take you captive,' end quote. They let me choose they let me choose between staying with them or returning to my own people. So I chose my people and they brought me to Medina." That was the end quote. Sorry about that. Umar asked the man, "What was their food?" He replied, "Full brown fava beans and everything over which the name of God is not mentioned." "What was their drink?" Umar asked. He replied, "Jadif, Jadf." According to al-Damiri, a Muslim writer from Egypt, Jadif is the froth whipped up from water. He also said it is every vessel left uncovered.
I tried looking into that, like if that had deeper meaning, and I really couldn't find anything. So, but it's just very interesting being kidnapped. Now, they talked about the believers versus non-believers, and we talked about that in the episode.
Yeah.
Those who do not follow the Quran and those who do, because they do have the choice.
Right. Yeah. What I found interesting, but I guess I'm curious about this. How do you know if you can't see them? How do you know you were kidnapped by jinn? You know what I mean? Like that's the part that doesn't make any sense about any of these stories.
But they can appear, because we talked about some of the stories in our episode about jinn, where they can manifest, they can appear. So and it talks to them being human-like.
So is it that, well, obviously we only get a couple of paragraphs here of information, but is it that they are invisible until they want to appear, and then they essentially are always visible if they feel that there's nobody around that can see them? Or like, how, you know what I mean? Like, how does, because, or are they just always visible? Just we can't see them because our eyes can't process that spectrum of light, perhaps. Unless they get like agitated or angry, and then they decide we're going to make ourselves seen. You know, I don't know.
It seems like they're part of a different plane or realm where they're there, but we just don't always see them. And it's possible maybe.
No, if they're part of a different plane or realm, we wouldn't be. If they wouldn't be able to interact with us.
No, if they have the capability to interact and be shown, because they can go through those dimensions.
So you're saying they go from dimension to dimension?
Yeah, because like think about it. I think like it's all here. We call it other realms, other planes, but like think about like how much is here that we don't see. And we talked about, you know, jinn, fairies.
That's why
ghosts.
I said they're here, but we just can't see them because our eyes can't process that light spectrum.
So, but if they have the ability to show themselves, perhaps.
Right. Yeah. Well, again, without
I don't know.
Talking to a jinn and
letting him give up his trade secrets. Know what you do. We're curious.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was the information, the extra information that we had that we thought would be fun to share for anyone interested.
Yeah.
Let us know if you have any questions. or
Absolutely.
any interesting stories or fun information about Jen. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah. There's I think we mentioned this in the episode. There's so much information out there, a lot of stories, a lot of books and that kind of thing. But it's the personal stories. Those are the things that I find most fascinating and most interesting. I kind of want, I mean, yeah, okay, you can read a book and get some personal stories from there, but it's people that know somebody who knows somebody, or maybe experience something themselves, or had a relative that had an experience or something that was relayed to them. Those are the kind of stories I like to hear. More like, I guess not real world, because that
Shared
doesn't really make sense. But
experiences.
yeah, exactly. Something a little more personal than something that's just in a
Yeah.
book or on a website is clickbait, for
Mm-hmm.
example. So anyway, all right. Well, guys, thanks a lot for listening,
Thank you
and
for listening.
we'll see you later.
Bye.